Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy BDELL. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Today I'm going to be breaking down the 2026, the year of the fire horse, and how it's collaborated with the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is equivalent with the four basic elements when you're talking about earth, air, water, and fire, that collaborates with the quintessential alchemical element, the fifth element. Now, this is also esoterically connected to the geopolitical afflictions that's taking place on the international level. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you already know what time it is. Put those rice bowls in the chat because we finna cook up this esoteric knowledge. You already know what time it is. Because there's a lot of things that's taking place on a numerical level and on an esoteric occultic level. And I'm going to be breaking down the occultic aspects of it as we get through the transmission at hand. So now, 2026 is basically the foundational blueprint of the year of the fire horse. This is basically setting the stage for the so-called prophecies that is connected to the theological context of revelations, right? Because one thing you got to understand about the engineered reset has to follow the timeline of the Bible. But the timeline of the universe is collaborated with the functions of nature. So the four horsemen of the apocalypse is connected to theological context, but really it's talking about the collaboration of the four basic elements of earth, air, water, and fire that collaborates with a consciousness that activates the seven thunders. We're going to get into that as we get through the transmission. Now, what you're looking at right here is a template. This is a template giving you the dimensional aspects of how numbers is basically the interdimensional vortex portal that's in between time and nature. Because I keep telling y'all, they keep creating these incantations and these dark rituals because they understand that numbers is how you're able to timeline jump. Numbers is how you're able to infiltrate and pierce the veil. Numbers is how you basically transmute the timeline of whatever's taking place in our reality. Because everything in a simulation is cultivated by numbers. Everything in a simulation is mathematical. So you have to understand the numerical sequences that work in tandem with Freemasonic numerology. So now, this is where we get into some of the Kirk situation, right? Because one thing you got to understand about everything that takes place in the simulation, everything is extrapolated by numbers. If you understand the numbers, you understand their language. If you understand their language, you would be able to break down the symbolism that coincides with Freemasonic ritualistic stuff. So now, when you get into the etymology of his name, Kirk, his name means free man, but a free man is actually a Freemason. So this is why you see an influx of the number 33 that was taking place during the time of this ritualistic event that took place on September 10th. So the sacrifice encodes the transition from sovereign to servitude under surveillance, but that's only the beginning. Charles means free man. In medieval guilds, only free man, not serfs bound to a land or a certain geographical landmass, could join the craft. That's why they were called Freemasons. So there's a definite connection between free man and Freemasons. So when you break down the etymology of his Charlie Kirk's name, it means free man, which is a Freemason. So it tells you right here in the National Post, it says that 33 hours, a timeline of Charlie Kirk's such and such search for the past suspect. And then they also had, a 33-hour prayer. And then when you look into his organization called the Global Turning Point, it is actually on the demarcation ley line the 33rd parallel, not a coincidence. So there's a lot of 33 numerology that's taking place within this ritual. So then when you get into the esoterics of it as well, because mind you, he was really good friends with Donald Trump. Because one thing you got to understand about the Masonic compass, the compass and square, because it operates at 47 degrees, and Donald Trump is the 47th president, which makes him the last president, because that's the apex of which you're talking about as far as like ritualistic royal bloodlines of Freemasonry. So everything that you seen took place was a Freemasonic ritual. And then when you break down the etymology of his name, Kirk, it translates to church, right? So Charles Kirk is the Church of the Free Man, Church of the Freemasons, which is a Masonic lodge, because a Masonic lodge is also a church, basically. Because one thing you got to understand about everything that takes place in the Freemasonic lodges, it all coincides with a unholy Trinity principle, because it collaborates with the methodology of all three monotheistic religions, such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, right? So then you also got to look at, his name. The guy's name was James, which is equivalent to Jacob. That translates to Israel, is our Israel. They're telling you what time it is on the planet by way of the numerology. If you understand the numbers, you can telegraph what's going to be taking place in the future. Now, another, Freemasonic numerology right here. Then you got the 3 rows of the 47 hats of Donald Trump. 47, 47, 47, 4 plus 7 equals 11. You understand right here. So like I said, 33 is a Har Mabith ritualistic, sacrifice. This, what you seen taking place, was a mock sacrifice. And I'll prove it to you. Everything that you're seeing taking place is a mock sacrifice. And mind you, during this time period, like I said, whether, if this was real or if it was fake, it's one of those things where you cannot negate that, your words have power, especially during the time of the sun cycle. Because when you're in the time of the solar cycle 25, what happens is your words is able to alchemize and manifest in physical form, meaning that, the vibrational frequencies of your words during the times of the sun cycle is able to collaborate with the ether, because the vibrational octave frequencies that come from your words contain silicon and carbon, right? That's why when you say certain words, it hits the top ruffles of the roof of your mouth, and it stimulates the pineal gland. And those neurons is what collaborates the etheric frequencies to the point where it's able to materialize, such as whatever you're trying to manifest. Like I said, you can manifest on a negative level. You can manifest on a positive level. So be careful of what you think and what you say during the time of the sun cycle. So Charlie Kirk, he put out this tweet in 2014. He said, "Did I just get by a what? And it feels like it." So like I said, be very meticulous of what you say during the time period. And mind you, like I said in my last transmission, from September 11th to October 14th, which is my birthday, and that's exactly 33 days apart. Not a coincidence. So many 33s. And then you got the numerical value of 38, which is equivalent to NBA Youngboy, 38 baby. So these are all rituals that's intertwined with the geopolitical apparatus that works in conjunction with every industry, such as the movie industry and the music industry. Everything is connected. Now, this gets even more weird, right? Because if you ever notice, it seems like they're setting up the timeline in the blueprint to come after, so-called melanated people. And it's one of those things where they trying to flip the script. Because I told you guys about Project Pogo. I told you guys about Project Zypher. I told y'all about Henry Kissinger's National Memorandum 200 that he created in 1975. He was the Secretary of State. And it's basically talking about a eugenics program that is predicated upon melanated people to basically eradicate that whole demographic in itself. I'm going to show you a publication that's basically coinciding with everything that I'm talking about. But put the rice bowls in the chat. Put the rice bowls in the chat. All right. So I got these publication, you got to read this book called White House Years by Henry Kissinger. He was the Secretary of State in 1975. And he said that, he's basically a eugenist. He's a eugenist. And he said that black birth on the planet is at unstable heights. So it's one of those things where you have to be very meticulous of what's taking place on a geopolitical scale when you're talking about what's taking place with, the degradation of so-called blacks. Because mind you, this is nothing but a ritual that's setting up, the unaliving program that's connected to Project Progo and Project Zypher. It's setting up that program to the point where they're able to transmute and alchemize the energy and put negative forces and occultic energy back on us in the form of a sacrifice. So that's why you got to be very meticulous. So this is also showing you right here at the bottom. He had a shirt on that said freedom, but the numerical value of freedom translates to the number 33 again, right? Then you had this going on. This is a trap door. This is a trap door set up days before the whole, situation took place on September 10th of Charlie Kirk's unaliving situation. So now, like I said, it's time to wake up. Come on, man. It's right in your face. It's like people can say that, oh, it's the embalming fluid and things of that nature. I'm not cutting that. I'm not cutting that. Like I said, Illuminati, we own to you. Everybody put the rice bowls in the chat, man, because this is why I said that everything in the Matrix is where they supplicate your emotions and they transmute it into weakness. And they transmute it into a weakness because they use it in the form of loosh. They feed off that negative energy. So when you got the great majority of people, they going against each other by way of words because they trying to enact a civil war against, so-called whites and so-called blacks. And then you got some people basically propagating the image of Charlie Kirk and trying to make him a martyr so much to the point where, they having a lot of, energy and emotional energy towards this, what took place. So it was one of those things where you got to be very meticulous. Everything that you see taking place right now on the international scale and a political scale, this is all based on harvesting because we are in the harvest months. They're trying to harvest our energy with emotional energy, right? Because the emotional energy in itself is a form of data, like I've been telling you guys, right? That is the only thing that's in between time and nature is the emotional energy, which is the data, 0 point energy. So that's how they extract everything when they put out, stuff like this. They want to make you cry. They want to make you mad. They want to make you sad. That's how they keep their systems going. They keep their systems going by way of dualism. So if you understand dualism and you're not bothered by what's taking place, you don't give a damn about what's going on, and you just following your own evolution, that's how you manipulate the matrix because you understand it's basically an illusion. So like I said, the perception of art imitates reality. Then you got the Time magazine, and they put out this publication, and on the front of the cover, it says enough. Then you got the Illuminati card game. In a picture of it, he looks just like Donald Trump. And then on the top, it says enough is enough. The perception of art imitates reality. This is not a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. Not a coincidence. Then mind you, like I said, again, they put everything in the movies. The CIA has an office in Hollywood, and Hollywood has an office in the CIA. So this is how they're able to alchemize and create their scripts in the movies and basically make it line up what's taking place with real-time events that's taking place in the simulation. So there's a series on Hulu that came out on September 10th called Tempest, right? And Tempest is based on the United Nations. It goes into politics and civics and things of that nature. But in one of the episodes, there was a guy who kind of looks like Charlie Kirk a little bit. He was, such and such in the throat. And then, mind you, that episode came out on September 10th. And then on season 1, episode 3, a crisis strikes when Manihu on her way to declare her candidate. So like I said, this is on episode 3. So like I said, y'all got to watch this stuff. The perception of art imitates reality. They're going to put it in the movies every time. They're going to put it in the magazines every time. They've been telling you the whole time that everything is basically a script. So if you understand that everything is a script, you can deviate and maneuver through the matrix, understanding that the great majority of everything is basically an illusion, right? Not a coincidence. Now, like I said, by way of the numbers, because like I said, numbers are portals. They want to take you to a different space and time. They want to take you back to this time, right? And, I want to give a disclaimer out there before I, go in with this transmission. It's one of those things where, by way of numerology, we have to be very critical about what's taking place, because one thing you got to understand about, numerology and the gematria body, and gematria code also works in synergy with our DNA. And our DNA and the gematria code works in synergy with the celestial bodies that's above, or whether if they outside the ice wall, whatever the case may be. But one thing you cannot negate is that planetary bodies corresponds with the gematria body, gematria code, and numerology at the same time, right? So what I'm basically saying is, it's like, my birthday is October 14th. So I want y'all to be very critical. If anything, I'm going to keep y'all updated if some was brewing up, something's weird, if they trying to do something to me or whatever, because like I said, some stuff is just not a coincidence to me. So like I said, be very critical of the numbers, because like I said, they understand that the simulation is ran by numbers. So if they got somebody that's able to pierce the veil with and infiltrate the information with, true information, such as, true knowledge or whatever, that's when, I can be a catalyst and become a problem, because I'm telling you guys about stuff like this. So like I said, I have to be very critical and mindful of everything that's taking place, because how this is not a ritual, that they're trying to predicate it on, against me, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I said that everybody in the conscious community, you also have to be very critical. You know what I'm saying? Anybody who has a voice, you have to be very critical during this time period, because soon as you start speaking against the degradation that was facilitated by Eurocentric westernized culture, when you start speaking against it, that makes you an enemy to the system. And they're going to start coming after you, just like how they did these two individuals, right? For speaking truth. It's not about, I don't give a damn about, Charlie Kirk and, and everything that he did and said or whatever. That's whatever the case may be. I don't care about none of that. But like I said, they're going to be attacking people. This was just basically setting a blueprint that they're going to be attacking melanated people for speaking truth. That's what I'm getting out of this picture right here. They're going to get rid of melanated people for speaking the truth. And like I said, you got to read this book. And then you also got to read this book, Behold a Pale Horse. He even talks about how they're going to start coming after truth speakers, right? To spark up a revolution on the planet by way of a civil war. And what better way to start a civil war to come after somebody like, who has a voice in the conscious community, right? Because they know that the people is going to revolt. That's another way to create an engineered reset. So that's why I said anybody who is speaking truth, anybody who is doing something positive that's trying to reverse the polarity that was connected to patriarchy and the deep state shadow government and all this stuff, like I said, be very critical in these times right now. Because what you're seeing taking place is a ritual. So it's not a coincidence that you got this going on. Right? They setting the stage. They setting the stage for everything. Right? So like I said, he who have eyes have to have the ability to see. You have to turn on your spiritual and your mental fortitude so much to the point where you're not, subjugated by the afflictions that's going to be, taking place with, the government. Right? Because the underlying program of Project Pogo and Eugenics programs and everything, it also works in tandem with, technocratic sorcery when you're talking about artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence doesn't have any vitality without the melanin. The Canaanite doesn't have any type of vitality without the melanin, but a specific type of melanin, the quintessential type of melanin, which is the neuromelanin, the brain and central nervous system melanin that creates melanocytes, which is an intelligence. So they want a certain intelligence inside these robots. They want a certain intelligence inside their genetics, so they're able to alchemize the energy that's connected to the sun. That's what they're basically trying to do. So that's why I said we have to be very mindful during these time periods. Like I said, a black student was found hanging. It was also another one, I forgot to put the picture up, but it's found hanging from a tree today at Delta University in Mississippi. Not a coincidence. like I said, get ready because, like I said, the perception of art imitates reality. They're going to start coming after us eventually, right? Matter of fact, let me see if I got a video for you guys. Let me see. Put the rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So we got that. Okay, we're not there yet, but I do have a video for you guys. We're almost there. But like I said, it's one of those things where, like I said, we got to be very meticulous. FBI identifies black activists as a greater threat than the white supremacists in Al Qaeda. That speaks volumes right there. Like I said, they're going to start coming after the truth tellers, the spark of revolution. They want to create an engineered reset. Because I told you about the 80-year cycle block theory, on how everything operates on the seculum of a cycle by way of a fourth turning. Every 80 years, there's a crisis that happens. The last 80 years was in 1945, the end of World War II. And before that was in 1865, was the end of Civil War. It was the end of the Civil War in 1865. So like I said, we have to be very meticulous of the time periods by way of the numbers. Every 80 years, there's a cycle that takes place. So be very meticulous. Don't fall for the traps. Don't fall for the technology of the beast, right? So then you got this going on. You got the 3 different governments have collapsed in 72 hours, right? Because like I said, we're going through reset. Everything has to go through a reset of energy, whether if it's engineered or if it's being cultivated by nature. It has to reset regardless. So like I said, the reset in itself is also being extrapolated by way of the fall of the church. So anytime you have secular music being, propagated at the Vatican, this is basically denoting the fact, like I said, it's a representation of the fall of the Vatican Church, which is the fall of the Eurocentric Westernized doctrines that created, psychological inducement that was predicated upon humanity. So like I said, it's one of those things we got to be very critical during these time periods. So this is why Donald Trump says the National Guard is deploying to Memphis, Tennessee, right? So like I said, you got the Colossus computer down there with Elon Musk. Then you got, the National Guard going down there. So it's like I said, they're trying to intercept energy. They're trying to create, many different forms of afflictions to basically box you into the system. I'm going to show you a video. All right. So like I said, we got to be, we have to start mobilizing. We have to start mobilizing and putting our resources together. Hold on for a second, guys. All right. I'm gonna play the video. See, they're preparing. This is what you're seeing taking place. This is basically, a barge full of, militarized, trucks and tanks and things of that nature. So they getting ready. They sending the National Guard to Chicago. They sending the National Guard, to Memphis and all these other places they got, so-called, black people. But like I said, you cannot negate that, whether if it was real or fake, but like I said, it wasn't a person of color who, perpetuated that whole situation that took place on September 10th. But they're deploying the National Guard to, melanated cities. So like I said, you got to be very critical of what's taking place because like I said, it's all connected to this. Project Pogo, Project Zypher, National Memorandum 200, Eugenics. I'm going to play the video. Like I said, get ready. We got to get ready. We got to get prepared for what's going to be taking place on the planet. Especially, the great majority of us who live in, highly, so-called, black areas. So like I said, they not playing. So like I said, we got to raise up our vibration. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up because all it takes is for them to, to pull another, so-called George Floyd situation. And here we go again, operating under a cycle again, keep going through the damn cycles. But like I said, we have to, come to a realization of the fact that we have to understand what's taking place by way of the numbers, the symbolism, to basically telegraph what's going to be taking place to where you can deviate from the cycle. That's what I'm trying to show you guys. So cities Trump, hold on. Cities Trump is planning on bringing the National Guard to. We already went to DC, Chicago, Memphis, Baltimore, Oakland, New Orleans, right? So, well, like I said, why don't you go to North Dakota or Utah? Like I said, we already know what's taking place. It's a Hegelian dialectic principle, right? Oh, there's so much trouble. We got to send them in because, like I said, they create the great majority of the influx of these afflictions that's taking place in the black communities. They do it with the frequencies, and the frequencies collaborates with the bad food that you put inside those communities. And then it basically creates a host of parasites that takes over the people and the minds to the point where they're able to, perpetuate, negativity and criminality amongst their people. So like I said, everything that you see taking place is a setup. Everything is a setup. Everything has a blueprint. That's that's the whole thing about Freemasonic rituals. So you got all this stuff going on with Trump as well. He's got Russia is accusing the United States of cooking up a massive financial reset, shifting its 37 trillion debt into crypto, devaluing it, and then rebooting the system by revaluing gold. If true wouldn't just shake up the crypto, it could slash savings, retirement funds, and the value of the dollar overnight. Now, like I said, now I'm gonna show you something. So that's not a coincidence. Now look, they just put out this 12-foot statue of Donald Trump of him holding a Bitcoin outside the Capitol on 3rd Street. Notice you see the number 3 as well, right? Not a coincidence. Because he is the false representation of the golden age. He is setting a blueprint for a synthetic golden age under a crypto control system. So they setting a blueprint because, like I said, Donald Trump, he is basically the commander-in-chief on a geopolitical international level. He controls everything on an international level. And I'm going to show you that because he just came back, with the royal family. And he was walking in front of, the king, basically, King Charles. So that's, that speaks volumes. I'm going to show you a video, and I'm also going to show you a few pictures. Hold on for us. Put the rice bowls in the chat because, like I said, Illuminati, we own to you. We own to you. All right. All right, here we go. So that they plus, like I said, then they doing the national anthem at the Windsor Castle, right? Which is not, even though you're supposed to show veneration to other countries or whatever, but this is the royal family, right? Because this is basically kind of like breaking a Geneva Convention Code treaty. You're not supposed to play or, set up another national flag on a certain royal bloodlines, landmass and things of that nature because it's based on autonomy and sovereignty. But you got to understand, but they created a fake sovereignty. But that's a whole different transmission. But I'm going to show you this video. It's going to show you Donald Trump, and he's going to be wearing a purple tie. And you notice King Charles, he's wearing a blue tie because he's a blue blood. But Donald Trump, he's wearing a purple tie because he's playing both sides. He's Democrat and Republican, right? He's Scottish right and York right, right? So like I said, he's half Canaanite and he's half Draconian. So he's connected to a royal bloodline, which is why he's the only president that's not, related to, all these other presidents, right? He's the only one. because like I said, he's going to be the catalyst to create a synthetic reset for a synthetic golden age. And I'm going to show you. Boom. Blue tie. She got on the blue. She got on the purple hat. He has on the purple tie, right? So like I said, this is all Freemasonic, ritualistic, incantations that's taking place. Because I was telling you guys on the Disclosure of Trumpets video, this is based on the coronation of kingship. They're king in him right now. I told y'all that about like 3 weeks ago when they sent the National Guard in DC. That was based on the coronation of kingship because he has continuity of government, meaning that he can activate martial law at any time because he's in control of FEMA, right? He's in control right now. This is why they're putting the statues up. This is why, Dr. Malachi York, he put out the publication, the Leviathan 666, and it showed Donald Trump as being the head of the beast of Leviathan that's connected to the beast of Revelations, right? So that's why I keep telling y'all, everything is connected to a form of prophecy. Everybody don't come on the internet playing, right? So that's why I say certain people that come on the internet, we putting all these divine codes and messages, and then we showing y'all in real time that we in the time of the so-called revelations that they speak about in the Bible, right? Because one thing you got to understand about the book of Revelations, the book of Revelation was not actually, connected to the actual so-called Bible. That was a book that was added. It was a book that was added because it was foretelling a certain subjugation of a certain demographic of people once the 6,000 years was basically up, right? Because the book of Revelations is actually revealing what is hidden by way of cosmic law. That's what you got to understand. So that's why I said there's a blueprint that's taking place in hand. If you understand colorology, if you understand the symbolism of the sigils, gematria, everything works in tandem. You cannot leave certain schools of thoughts out. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to decipher who's the enemy and who's whatever, right? You're going to be tricked like everybody else. You're going to be tricked like the 85% of the great majority of people who's walking around deaf, dumb, and blind. So they king in him. So 3 weeks ago, I told you, everything that you see taking place with Donald Trump is Luciferian moon magic, the coronation of kingship. They're king in him, and they did this yesterday. Can't make this up, ladies and gentlemen. Put the rice bowls in the chat. Like I said, what does the Luciferian do? They play both sides, dark and light, Democrat and Republican, Scottish right, York right, right? See, they setting the stage, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to show you another video. They got him at dinner. I don't think this has happened before. Here we go, another video.
See, Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. And the
matter of fact, he said he's the first American president welcomed there because the coronation of kingship, Luciferian moon magic, they're crowning him king over the international geopolitical apparatus that's in connection with the technocratic sorcery for a synthetic golden age. That's what they're doing with him. I keep telling you guys that.
Think about it. It's a lot of presidents, and This was the second state visit, and that's the first, and maybe that's going to be the last time. I hope it is, actually. But this is truly one of the highest honors of my life. Such respect for you and such respect for your country. For many decades, His Majesty the King has epitomized the fortitude, nobility, and the spirit of the British monarchy and the British people. He's dedicated himself to preserving the glory and unique character of this kingdom, restoring life to the rivers and streams, supporting the works of its artists and composers, planting trees and gardens in its countryside. And I just visited one of the most beautiful I've ever seen that you just completed, and protecting the architectural integrity of cities, villages, and towns. He has uplifted the poor, cared for rural farmers, and tended to wounded veterans like nobody else.
Now, you notice you see the red collar right here. This is the same thing that kind of like, Count Dracula, he wears that same red collar on Bram Stoker's Count Dracula. Because like I said, anytime you're a duke or a king or these are basically titles of nobility, titles of nobility that's connected to something, satanic.
I'll tell you that I just stood in line and shook about 150 hands. And the king knew every single person and every single company. And some of them had bad names like XYZ-Q3. And he knew every one of them, or at least I think he did, because nobody was complaining. I was very impressed with that.
So like I said, prepare, because like I said, they've been setting the stage. They setting the stage. Dr. York was right. There's a reason why in the book, in that publication, he got Donald Trump's, face on the cover. He looks just like him because he's seen something. He was a seer. They don't want you to see. So this is why he's able to, this is why he has the power to destabilize and neutralize certain organizations, right? So the President Donald Trump announced the second United States strike against the alleged Venezuelan drug boat. Then, like I said, then you got the whole crypto situation going with him because it's all working in conjunction with artificial intelligence in the smart cities that they want to implement before the agenda for 2030 in the year of 2028. So pay attention and be very meticulous, the people who live in California, because that's where they're going to put the smart cities first. So that means there has to be a form of destruction in that geographical area for them to basically introduce the smart cities first to, LA and the Bay Area. So be very critical. Mind you, like I said, you got about 7 octillion atoms in the body, and all those atoms in itself hold information. And it holds information because the atoms in the cells in the bodies are basically, small particles of microchips, computer chips that activates the carbon body. So that aurora borealis that's basically being created due to the extraction of, solar flares and coronal mass ejections. That's when you're talking about, what makes everything as far as like righteous and holy, right? Because these solar flares in itself is what resurrects the dead neurons in the brain, and it resurrects, the trauma inside the epigenetic strands that's connected to your subconscious mind. So it's one of those things where, you got all these energies that's coming to the planet. It's being used as a form of resurrection. So that's why I said, whether if you have to do everything in increments, like I said, too much of anything is actually bad for you. So like I said, sometimes you got to step back from bad food, step back from just try something as far as just not eating on Mondays and Fridays, right? So because like I said, you want to alchemize these energies as much as possible. So it's like I said, the planet is upgrading, so you want to upgrade along with the planet. You don't want to be like a motherfucking, an iPhone 7 when really, you should be having an iPhone 17 or whatever. That means that, like I said, your hardware, your software is out of order. So like I said, you got to upgrade yourself. So also, you had all these energies that's coming to the planet, right? Because one thing you got to understand about the great majority of these solar flares, when they're spitting down to the planet, they're connected to the alphabetical monogram of the Hebrew sigil system, right? These are all Hebrew sigils that's being projected to the planet to raise up the vibrational consciousness, because it collaborates with the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is the four basic elements that collaborates with ether. That's what the aurora borealis is basically is. The aurora borealis is basically gamma radiation. Gamma radiation is ether. So anytime that you have ether collaborating with the coronal mass ejections, that's going to activate the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So it's basically setting the stage for the year 2026, which is the year of the fire horse. And the year of the fire horse is actually the red horse of Revelation, right? So that's why I said during the times of the we was in the years of the horse, you had the Berlin Wall that fell in 1989. Nelson Mandela was released in 1990, and you have apartheid ending. And then you have the year of the horse is basically an amalgamation of conflict, of breaking old orders, and freedom basically collaborating together. And then in the year of the earth horse in 1978, you had an Iranian revolution. Then you had Camp David Accords. Then you had China reforms. And then you had the Ferguson protests in 2014. Because like I said, I keep telling y'all, mind you, like I said, they trying to do something. They're trying to do something. They setting the stage for a civil war. Where's it at? See, they setting the stage, right? By, you know, such and such a police brutality. They're setting the stage. So like I said, be very critical during these time periods. So 2014, you had the Ferguson protests of, you know, what took place with, you know, the attacking of the kid that was from St. Louis. And then you had Russia annexes, and then you got the ISIS, the rise of ISIS, right? So this is what you got, you know, taking place during the times of the year of the horse. So like I said, there's a reason why, you know, like I said, the perception of our imitation reality, that's all connected to the form of biblical scripture. So there's a pastor, he says that he claims a vision told him Jesus will return to earth on September 23rd to 24th of 2025, right? Be very critical, right? All he's basically saying is, in so many words, is saying that there's a new energy here. So upgrade yourself, right? He doesn't know that because he was indoctrinated by the seminary school that's connected to, you know, the Vatican and what he got to propagate in his curriculum and what he teaches to his congregation, what you have. And then, like I said, this is all connected to who we are genetically. We in the 9th year, denotes the fact that we're in the year of the cosmic serpent, the Kundalini serpentine fire. The sun erupts with the Earth-sized plasma storm. 78,000 miles solar flare structure triggers magnetic shield impact after 43. I don't know what the rest of that says, but they said that the solar flare looked just like an S. But like I said, this is why you got to understand that, like I said, everything that's connected to the movies is actually talking about the resurrection of our DNA. So it's not a coincidence that in the 9th year, they put out a Superman movie, because the Superman movie is actually talking about the resurrection of the Christ energy, the Christ body that works in tandem with the carbon body, which is us, right? So that's why I said there's a resurrection process that's taking place on the planet by way of planetary bodies. So you have to understand, you know, how the planets work in tandem with the circadian rhythm of who we are genetically. So like I said, there's a certain time period where you're supposed to alchemize these energies from the sun, where you're supposed to be eating and sitting up at certain times of the day to get these energies. There's a reason why you're supposed to have perfect posture, sitting up at a 90 degree angle. Because one thing you got to understand about, you know, some of the structures over in ancient Egypt that was set up for, you know, the Pharaoh Seti, a lot of them, they were set up in 90 degree angles, right? Because 90 degree angles denotes the fact that it gives a more of an intrinsic energy to that alchemical process to where you're able to resurrect yourself. Because I told you the coronal mass ejections in itself, they come down to the planet in the form of a 90 degree angle. And a 90 degree angle is what makes you an L. So a lot of times you got to get your fascia system up right. Your fascia system is your electrical system that's connected to your energetic morphic field that's basically tethered connected to your nervous system. So your fascia system, you got to get your posture right to where you're able to absorb information from the sun. So when you're sitting up in the sun, make sure you got that 90-degree angle going on. So like I said, all the bases in the DNA and the RNA have been found in meteorites, right? I told y'all about the movie Meteor Man, right? It's the resurrection of DNA because the meteor in the movie Meteor Man was actually green, and green is connected to a form of a noble gas, which is Kryptonian, and Kryptonian has the ability to resurrect the Kundalini serpent that basically looks just like the sigil system of Superman, because the S on Superman's chest is actually a serpent with a pyramid to activate the Merkaba, which is the light body, the golden body that takes you to the golden gate in the golden age, which makes you an Elohim. So with that being said, I do got another video to show you guys, because like I said, we are the aliens that they're basically speaking of, but you do have negative entities on the planet that's being controlled by parasites. Because one thing you got to understand, these parasites, they have the ability to replicate themselves so much to the point where they're able to mimic the whole human's physiology to the point where they can actually grow outside of the human body and bust out, you know, people's stomachs and stuff of that nature. Just like how they showed you in the horror movies with Stephen King. But I'm going to show you this video because they're giving you full disclosure. And mind you guys, my throat is a little sore today. And, you know, my sinuses and everything is acting up. So I'm going to show you guys this video for a second. Okay. Yes. Yeah, before we do that, but like I said, you know, you got different stuff that's coming to the planet. You got all types of, you know, meteorites that's coming to the planet. And I don't know, like I said, this could be fake. This could be somebody trolling. But supposedly in Panama, there was a meteorite that fell, and the guy, he went and picked it up, and it started growing over the course of time. And I'm going to show you a video that basically demonstrates that.
Wow, ¿eso qué es? Más agua. Yo creo que ya puedo agarrarlo. Está frío, no está tan grande. ¿Sabes cuánto debe valer esto? Todo en las redes sociales que parece una papa, que era algo de hormigas. Esto cayó del cielo. El meteorito ha cambiado de color y me di cuenta que destruye todo lo que es planta. No se puede acercar a una planta porque... Miren ustedes. Cuando uno le pone algo con vida, por ejemplo esta hoja de piedra, no sé de dónde vendrá, de qué galaxia.
What it's basically showing you that it's able to melt, you know, plants and things of that nature, but it feels cold. But when it's able to collaborate with plants, it basically, you know, dematerializes the enzyme inside the plant.
Les voy a enseñar algo de otro mundo. Aquí en el lugar donde cayó el meteorito hace varios días, cuando yo apago la luz, miren cómo se ve. Es algo totalmente increíble. Si algo me preocupa es que algún día se desprenda de la roca, pero por ahora no. Por ahora le mantengo su crecimiento paralizado, pues no lo dejo tomar mucha luz. Cuando toma luz solar, crece. Por eso que lo mantengo en la oscuridad. Esto no sabe.
Why you pick it up?
No puedo dormir, pero no me siento tan...
Why would you pick it up? That's stupid. Even if, you know what I'm saying, if it's real, like, why would you do that? Idiot. Now you're going to be creating a damn plague on the planet because you're picking up stuff you ain't got no business picking up. And then I got one more video for you guys. Why would you do that? I don't understand people nowadays. And then we got this, like I said, this is full disclosure. Like I said, they setting the template for everything right now. Full disclosure. And it tells you right here, breaking news, Congressman Tim Burchett just revealed that entities are coming from 5 to 6 deep water sites on Earth. Burchett has been involved in UFO and UAP exposure since 2023. And you got to read this book by William Cooper called Behold a Pale Horse, because he basically extrapolates the edification, talking about how the great majority of the UFOs come from the water. And he was a naval intelligence officer, and he's seen one with his own eyes, and he had to sign an NDA based upon what he saw. And he started putting stuff inside of his book. And I think this book is being revised about, over, 100 times. They took a lot of information out of this book. So I'm gonna play the video for you guys.
These are entities that are here on this earth, that have been on this earth, that, who knows how long, and that we.
I'll play it back. He said there are entities that's been on this earth and on this earth since he don't know how long they've been here. But I'm gonna play it back for those who can't hear it.
These are entities that are here on this earth, that have been on this earth, that, who knows how long, and that we think they're coming in from way out. Maybe they did millennia ago, but they're here and they're in these deep water areas, and that's why. Like we say, we know more about.
The reason they in deep water areas because you got to have a certain vibrational frequency in order to pierce the firmament. You can't pierce the firmament if you don't have a certain genetic format. You got to be operating for the heart space. Only the Sufi order of the Sons of Green Light, the green emerald energy, the emerald energy of Thoth, Tahuti, balancement, equilibrium, which makes you a god. That's the only way you could pierce the, the veil in the firmament. But you have to go through the abyss, through Sheol, right? Which is the black sun. That's the only way that basically takes you to a different space and time when you go inside these bodies of water. The great majority of these spaceships or crafts or whatever, they're coming from the waters. They're not coming from the firmament. Anything that comes from the firmament is Elohim. Anything that comes from the abyss is actually what they call the bottomless pit of revelation, of what we call cryptids and things of that nature, or the 200 fallen angels.
Face of the moon than we do what's going on there. Now, we have a higher propensity of sightings around these 5 or 6, I believe, deep water areas. And so to me, it just it creates a question there. And then when we have naval personnel telling me that we have these sightings and that there's these underwater craft they're chasing that are doing hundreds of miles an hour, and the best we've got is something that does maybe just a little under 40 miles an hour. So I got a lot of questions about that stuff, and
let's have a look at this first of all. This is Charlie Kirk's video from last year about a UFO over Wisconsin.
You're about to see them again. Just watch up above the horizon, and they're going to get really bright, and then they're going to go away. See them? There's 2 of them right there. Those are not airplanes.
Yeah, they keep circling.
They just keep circling, and they're going to go away.
And there's nothing on your radar right now?
No, there's nothing there. I can zoom out.
Now the light's going out.
They're gone.
Have you ever seen anything like that before?
Wow. Nothing on the radar, but these are not airplanes, according to those 2 guys in the cockpit there. Richard, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
What was that, do you think?
Well, it could easily have been a UFO. They like to call them UAPs now. They've sort of changed the name, but the same thing. There's been sensational information out this week in Congress, including the fact that the most powerful missile America has just literally bounced off an extraterrestrial craft last October. And this was shown to people in Congress. But on this tragic day, I thought I'll just have a look, because he was a champion of free speech, Charlie Kirk, and indeed he did have this sighting. He did film it last October, and he did put it up. He got millions of views on X. So I wouldn't quite say he's an enthusiast, but he was certainly an honest, free-speaking person, and he certainly hasn't ruled it out being extraterrestrial.
So what are we looking at here? It says they are here. Is that?
Now, along the way, something that came across my path in this was that I was contacted by a CEO of a think tank in Washington, D.C. This is back a couple of decades ago. He says, I want you to come and participate in a conference here in Washington. I said, well, frankly, I'm too busy. What's it about? He says, I can't tell you what it's about, but if you come and you participate, you will consider it later to be one of the most important conferences you ever been to. Well, since I had respect for him and knew his background and many things he's done, I did finally decide to come to this conference. And when I arrived, there were about, 15, 20 people. I recognized some of them from the military, from CIA, DIA, some businessmen, and so on. So I thought, well, this is quite an interesting group of people. And so, to start the conference off, he said, this conference is about disclosing something to the American public. As a startup position,
he said it's about disclosing something to the American public or the, humanity. He's saying that we're not ready for it, right? But like I said, the truth is going to come out. The truth has to come out during the time of the sun cycle. We're in solar cycle 25. So that means that something has to happen. Pope Leo XIV is the full disclosure Pope. 2027 is the point of no return. And they set the blueprint for it right now as we segue into the year of 2026, which is the year of the fire horse, the red horse of Revelation, right? To set up the stage for 2027. And then as we, transition, into 2030. This is why you have to get this book. My book is coming out on October 14th, right? The Sacred Book of the Chosen. We're going to talk about that after this video.
Assume that there have been crash retrievals by Russia, China, and the United States. And the question is, can we bring this out to the public? And so I think and most of the people I knew, when you talked to them later, said, oh, this is really cool. I mean, this could really go someplace. So he said, okay, the strategy we're going to use is we're going to make a list of all the areas that you think would be affected by this. And then on each one, you're going to have to grade them on a scale from +9 to -9 as to the level of impact and whether it's positive or negative. Okay. So we started out by making lists. So we started out with the obvious things. Well, the stock market, maybe religions. Well, certainly politics would be affected. So we made a long list, and it was really a long list. And the time we got down to the bottom of the list, we were really in the weeds. Like, okay, if corporation A has access to retrieve materials that corporation B doesn't, then when this comes out, corporation B is going to sue corporation A, and sue the government. This is really going to be a tough thing to kind of handle. So, okay. So anyway, we broke up into groups, each taking a certain number of the things that were in our list. Okay. And in my group, we added up the numbers, +9 to -9. And we ended up in the negative category, even though we were kind of positively disposed to the idea. So I thought, well, maybe that just has to do with the particular list that we got. So then I talked to other people that were on other lists and said, we came to a negative number also. Well, make a long story short, it turned out that everybody going through these lists, it was a very sophisticated situation with complex computers and big screens and all that kind of stuff. It finally came down to the fact that the problem was there's so many areas to handle, and there was no way to handle them all at the same time. And so the final result was, therefore, the leader said, we're going to recommend that we don't go forward with this. And so those of us who were participating in this were pretty disappointed, thinking, we started thinking that, this would be a good thing to do. So anyway.
Yes.
UFO struck by the Hellfire missile.
So that's with that. So like I said, they setting the stage for everything. They setting the stage and a blueprint for everything that's taking place for the year of 2026, but they got to do everything right now. So that's why it's important. My publication is coming out on October 14th of 2025, the same day as, Charlie Kirk's birthday and George Floyd. So like I said, this book is going to extrapolate a lot of information on how to get through the Great Awakening period, what's going to be taking place in between the years of 2025 and 2030. So this publication is kind of like a prophetic guideline on how to deviate through the simulation as you have affliction that's taking place on American soil and on an international level. So I'm going to give a brief synopsis. So the synopsis of this video was basically talking about the year of 2026, which is the year of the fire horse. The fire horse is actually connected to the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And the four horsemen of the apocalypse is actually talking about the collaboration of the four basic elements of earth, air, water, fire that is conjoined with the quintessence of ether. So that creates, interface transitions in the matrix. And then, I go into talking about how numbers are portals and how, the numbers is basically piercing the veil. Because one thing you got to understand about, a coronal mass ejection. A coronal mass ejection is electromagnetic radiation, and that radiation is frozen geometry. And frozen geometry is frozen light, and that light is able to pierce the veil that's in between time and nature. So that's why I said the numbers are actually the portals. So if you understand the numbers by way of Freemasonic numerology, such as the number 47, that's connected to the 47 problem of Euclid. And then when you look at the Freemasonic compass and square, it shows you the number 47. And Donald Trump is the 47th president. And then you got 33 rituals, such as being connected with Charlie Kirk and his birthday and my birthday. And then you got this, BS going on. This is fake. Like I said, it's time to wake up. And I show you the perception of art imitates reality right here through the Illuminati card game and in the TV show called Tempest. Then you got this going on. They're going to start coming after us. So that's pretty much going on right now because, like I said, the collapse of the old world is taking place in full spectrum. It's taking place in full spectrum. So everything that you see taking place as far as, the socio-political aspect of civics that's taking place on the international level, it all coincides with planetary alignments. It all coincides with westernized economics and civics that's also working in conjunction with Charlie Kirk's situation or whatever. So everything that you're seeing taking place right now was setting up the blueprint for the year of the fire horse of 2026, as we segue into the year of 2027, which is the year of the point of no return, because that is basically the representation of the fall of the church. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. Prepare to get the book of the Sacred Book of the Chosen that's going to be coming out on October 14th of 2025, basically a month from now. So prepare for it. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, end of transmission.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Man, my auntie passed last night. This is a sad life, I'm trying to get my cash right. Past bright, yeah, I'm shining like a flashlight. Trying to take off quick, might catch a fast flight. I'm mad tight, shitting on her with my ass wipes. Staying away from old friends, they all seem fake to me. Hating me, cause I'm getting dough just like the bakery. I'm Tired of a mediocre life, I got hopes of Mike's fiends smoking pipes. It's the second song that I wrote tonight. Haters smoking spite, how we got such a focused sight. I done flirted with death, 98 was the birth of the best. Grass cut from the surface I met. Rhymes I steadily spew, my hope will never be through. When it's all said and done, they'll remember me too. Life's a trip, regardless if the lace is tied. I'm spitting dope on my listeners, I make them high. The media got your brains baked and fried. Great supply, take your eyes and replace them with the ancient lies. I'm too cold, I spit hot. New flows for hip-hop, a few shows and get guap. New clothes, no wristwatch. I don't really care about your materialistic. Spazzing in the booth from iller than venereal sickness. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness. Trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness. Trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness. Trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness. Trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Gotta count my blessings even though I'm daily stressing. See, my brain is a weapon, I can use it for protection. Used to take dabs off the rip like collections. Flows very often relative to beat selections. Block your number, cut you off, I hope you get the message. Hold the mic close to me like it's supposed to be. Haters act like they don't notice me, but I'm too focused, see. I devote to dreams and promote my schemes. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness. Trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness.